Were you speeding?
Well, I was when I was overtaking the caravan. Is the policeman pulling us over?
Yes.
Oh. Hi, my name's John and this is my partner Michelle. And this is our 7-year-old 70,000 mile Tesla Model S.
Come with us as we travel through 9 countries from the south coast of the UK to the top of Norway. A journey of over 5,000 miles in a car that the tabloid press would have you believe has little to no battery performance left.
And let's see whether the Tesla charging network is up to the job of getting us all the way there and all the way back. Because if it is, Elon's paying for all the fuel. Welcome to the long free ride. Welcome back, and if you're new here, hello. We hope you enjoy the ride. Here on the large scale map, you can see that we leave the ice hotel and head further north to stay in a walker's cabin at the end of a field. And then the following day, we head even further north to stay at a hotel in Honningsvag. This is our jumping off point to go and see the midnight sun up at the North Cape. So in more detail, we initially have to head back sort of northeast in order to get some charge at a place called Puoltikasvaara. That is pretty much going to be a full charge because it's a long way to our next charger in Norway. From Puoltikasvaara we head north into Finland and we follow a river that runs between Sweden and Finland until eventually that takes us into the mountains and into Norway. From there we head and get our charge at Skibotn and then stay at this walker's cabin at the end of a field. It's a truly magical place. From this point there are a number of chargers, so we head north and just pick up charges along the way before we eventually arrive in Honningsvag. The views on some of the driving here are just beautiful. Today is the day that we finally leave Sweden and head into Norway and start to head back north again to try and get up to the North Cape. It is also the day where we have the longest route that we've planned so far between 2 chargers. This one requires 100% and hopefully gets us there with 10 to 15%, but
we'll see.
We're at our first charging stop of the day. You'll have to excuse the lines on the screen. I can't really stop that because the camera doesn't sync with the car screen. And we're at a place called, I'm going to murder this, Puoltikasvaara in Sweden. And we're going to be heading to Skibotn in Norway. This is our longest leg, sort of constant leg with really nothing in between other than forest and very little else. So
we're going to see some trees.
312 kilometres. In theory, at the moment, we should get there with 7%, but we do still have about another 10% to add to the battery. So with a bit of luck, it will give us some charge when we get there. Otherwise, we're going to be stuck. So the car's charging away. And we've got another 10% to add.
So the 312 kilometres is about 193 miles of trees, I think, and some more trees.
Yeah.
Once we cross into Finland, we know we can't fly the drone because of the Ukrainian war that's going on at the moment. There's a no-fly zone. We were able, however, to get this shot. We didn't know what lay ahead on the road today. We could be delayed, we could be diverted. So there was a risk that we'd run out of charge. So John changed the settings in the car. This meant no air conditioning was allowed, and he also put it into range mode. This apparently redistributes the power to the two motors and effectively changes the performance of the vehicle from sporty to efficient.
Now turn left onto Riksvägen.
Well, I don't know, because that's all a bit confusing with the changing tarmac and everything. Finland!
Bye bye, drone. I'll check it when we have lunch, but I'm fairly sure it just said charger there.
Oh, there is
Tesla chargers.
Charger.
Seeing those superchargers was a real surprise, as we'd spent some time planning this route because we were worried about the distance between the two charges, and so we'd looked at what our options would be should we get halfway through the day and realise we weren't going to make it. It must just have been that they are so new that they weren't on the car's database, and nor within the database of a Better Route Planner, the trip planning software that we're using. However, it did mean we'd spent the morning driving sedately, using range mode with no air conditioning, and we could have just been blatting along at our normal speed, aircon on, hey ho. We'd bought a takeaway lunch at the cafe in Puoltikasvaara, and so we found a nice place by the river that divides Finland and Sweden, and sat there and had a very nice lunch. As we climbed into the mountains towards Norway, the landscape changed. Gone were the large forests of high trees to be replaced by more scrubby low trees and more of a tundra feel. As we approached the Norwegian border, it was as though someone had flicked a switch that was marked scenery. It was just fantastic.
Crossing into Norway makes it the 9th country on our trip. Now, lots of people know that Norway is famous for the mountains, the fjords, skiing. They're very good at the Olympics. But what you might not know is that in the 1980s, it was actually Norwegians that introduced salmon sushi to the Japanese. Whilst the Japanese absolutely understood sushi, they didn't previously use salmon for it. Thank you, Norway.
The weather on this day and the cloud formations in the sky, the roads, it was a magical drive, and it really was. And the further we went, the better it seemed to get.
The reindeer we encountered on this trip didn't seem worried about the noise from the car at all, and in fact this lot didn't move out of the way. We had to swerve onto the wrong side of the road in order to get past them. You'll see from the footage that we've been really lucky. There really wasn't much traffic in Norway. The roads are a great condition, and I have to say the mobile coverage, even when blasting it down a highway, has been incredible. We hadn't been driving in Norway for long. I mean, literally 10 to 15 minutes, and John gets pulled over by the police. He had just been overtaking a caravan, and he did say to me in the car that he may have exceeded the speed limit in doing the overtake manoeuvre. I'm just glad it was him driving at the time. He's also the only person that's got beeped so far on the road trip. Not that I'm keeping score or anything.
The stop turned out to be a routine one by customs staff. They obviously prefer this location rather than the border up in the mountains. Once we had proved to the officer that Michelle's drink problem wasn't so bad that we had 6 bottles of gin in the back, we were free to go. The road then took us down out of the mountains and to the beautiful shoreline at the town of Skibotn. So our compromises in the morning by putting range mode on, turning off the air conditioning and driving more sedately had meant that we arrived with plenty of charge. We had 36%. And this gave us a lot of confidence for future legs in the trip. But is it a compromise you'd be happy to make? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're there, why not like and subscribe? Once we've got enough charge to get us to our next charge point, with a bit of leeway and also a bit of extra for a bit of exploring that evening, we headed off.
We were staying at Basecamp Birtavarre. This was chosen because of its location on the E6 road that we were travelling on, and it was remote. It was absolutely stunning. It was described as a hiker's lodge, and it backed onto both a river called the Skibotn River, but also the mountains, and the location was really picturesque. The facilities themselves we knew were basic. It was described as a hiker's cabin, and we knew it sort of boasted an outdoor barbecue area and shared bathroom facilities. What I didn't realise was the camping element meant you were supposed to take your own utensils and mugs, not just your own coffee and milk. So that was a bit interesting. However, it was all good. We were up really early because, again, it's daylight 24/7 and the curtains are really thin. Plus, the cabin next to us had 6 motorbike people in it doing a tour, which sounded amazing because they'd come from Switzerland.
The Norwegian coastline looked beautiful in the morning sunshine as we headed further north. We decided not to have breakfast at the hiker's lodge and would wait for our first charging stop. Whilst we left the Tesla gorging electrons, all courtesy of Elon, we headed round the corner to a cafe. It had a wonderful first floor eating area looking out over the stunning bay. We really enjoyed our breakfast watching the little fishing boats coming and going. The road after breakfast took us over some quite large mountains with some great viewpoints, and then back down to the seashore with views that you could never get bored of.
We charged in Alta, an area famous for its rock carvings from 4200 BC. However, we couldn't stop there because we still had about 3 hours to drive to Honningsvag on the island of Magarö. We have spent the last 2.5 days just driving on the E6, but we were turning onto the E69 at Alta Fjord. So this was the road that actually got us to the tunnel and into Honningsvag. Technically, the island of Magarö is considered the northernmost point of mainland Europe, but you do actually approach it through a tunnel and have done since 1999. But we're going to save the footage of the tunnel for the next episode for you. The island of Magarö has no trees apart from a few mountain birch, so the landscape really is flat tundra and scrubland. We were staying the night in Honningsvag, which is the northernmost city in Norway. It did have to get special permission to be granted city status. This is because it has less than 50% of the required 5,000 inhabitants in order to achieve city status. Each summer, there are 6 Sami families that bring 6,000 reindeer to graze. This does mean that reindeer outnumber the inhabitants of the whole island of Magarö by a factor of about 2.
In some way, reaching Honningsvag felt like we'd reached our destination, but the reality was that our destination still lay about 25 miles away and we'd have to wait till the next day. However, for a geek like me, there was still some excitement left in the day as we got to charge at Tesla's most northerly supercharger in the world. At almost 71 degrees north, it's closer to the pole than those in Iceland, Canada and Alaska. After checking in at the Scandic Hotel, we took ourselves down to the port to have a look around and find some food. There weren't many places open, but we did manage to get a slightly dodgy pizza. After that, we walked along the main high street before ducking back down into the port, where we found a nice quirky bar. Like many places in Scandinavia, they'll offer you a floated beer so you can try a number. And so we settled in for a few drinks and to relax after a long day's driving. Tomorrow would be a big day. Let's have a look at the stats for this episode. Over the 2 days, we drove 544 miles, which is 875 kilometres, and we used 176 kilowatts of battery energy.
There were a total of 5 charging stops on this leg of the journey, and we were stationary and plugged in for 2 hours, 40 minutes across the 2 days.
Once again, we were able to use Tesla chargers for the entire journey, and so our cost was zero, and we didn't have any other costs related to the car. Again, if you don't understand why we don't get charged, take a look at the video linked in the comments below. So let's add the stats from this episode across to the trip stats.
We hope the Long Free Ride is demonstrating that you can do long road trips in an electric vehicle and giving some hints of what the future of motoring looks like. Please like, share and subscribe to the channel to help us bring this message to a wider audience. What do you think the future of mobility looks like? Let us know in the comments. It was a truly spectacular view at North Cape. It's where the Arctic Ocean meets the Barents Sea. We couldn't see that for all the fog and cloud. However, the midnight sun, just gorgeous, a totally surreal experience.